Alright, so we've got drums mixed now, and if you haven't seen that video, just check out the previous video on how I mix drums. So now we're gonna be so now we're going to be mixing bass, and there's a certain technique I like to use with bass. But first, I recorded this bass through a Sansamp RBI, and that's how I got this tone. Even if you don't, this is still a good way to do it. But maybe before this, send it through a like Pod Farm or Bias, like a really good sounding amp or something, so you can have a good tone to start with. And like anything, if you have a good sounding tone to begin with, it's really hard to screw it up. Make sure it sounds good at the start. So let me show you what this sounds like over the drum mix. This is nothing on the bass, just the RBI DI. Here you go. Cool, already sounds pretty good. So what I'm gonna do is I like to mix bass in two parts. I'm gonna duplicate this track. So we have two of the exact same thing. So I'm gonna process this one differently than this one. This is gonna be our low end bass track. We just call it bass low. Call this one bass high. All right, so I'm gonna mute high. We're gonna start with low because low is gonna give you the most problems for sure. So we're gonna start off with high pass filter. I always have this on every single track, at least at 30. And that's just to clean up the master. You'll give it a little bit more headroom and it won't sound as muddy in the low end. Then we're gonna throw low pass on. And you have to kind of find a sweet spot for this. I like it around 200, but everyone's different. And every sound is different, so let's see where this one lays. Cool, that sounds pretty good right there. I may adjust it later, but we'll see. All right, so next, what I'm gonna do is throw an L1 on here, and I like L1 for this purpose. It sounds really good on this and guitars. So I'm gonna pull the out ceiling down, because it's gonna get really loud. All right, so that's gonna add some harmonics just because of the nature of L1. So I'm gonna pull the same Pro Q back down. I'm gonna do a little bit of EQing also. There's kind of some rumbliness I want to get rid of. All right, cool. Now something else I like to do, it's called sidechain compression. And essentially what it is, whoops, wrong one. Essentially what sidechain compression is, it's gonna be ducking out your bass when the kick hits so that they don't clash. So when the kick hits, it's going to turn down the bass really quickly. You're barely gonna be able to tell. It's just gonna sound like the kick comes through the mix a little easier. Doesn't blend in with the bass. So I like using this just plain Pro Tools compressor. So you turn the attack all the way down. So as soon as the kick hits, it's immediately Going to squash the bass down a little bit. And then turn this down, but not all the way, because if you have it too fast, this compressor will kind of crackle a little bit. But before you do that, so we have everything set here. We're going to go to the kick, send, and we're going to send it to an unused bus. So let's use 3. You can rename it to kick side chain, and then just turn this up to 0. So it's sending everything with all these effects. It's sending it to this empty bus that's going to be coming in right here. So we go to the plugin that's on the bass track. We have the input set to kick sidechain, which is what we're sending out of. So now we have the kick, a copy of the kick, sending into this compressor to this little key, but we have to enable this input by clicking on the key over here. So now notice when the kick hits, when I play the track, when the kick hits, they're going to see gain reduction happening. All right, so I cut 500, or sorry, excuse me, I cut 50 because if you look on the bass EQ, that's where I'm kind of leaving the bass residing in. So I'm cutting where the bass is, and I'm cutting here because the kick I have residing where I'm cutting on the bass. So it's kind of like the pieces of a puzzle, the low end. You have to figure out what you want to sit over the other. You want the kick on top, bass on bottom, or vice versa. So in this case, we have bass on the bottom, kick on the top. All right, so that sounds pretty solid. This is something that you're going to be coming back to, especially when you add guitars in, because you don't really want to muddy up the guitars with a lot of bass, and you don't want to leave too much low end on the guitars either. All right, so let's go ahead to the high end on the bass. Something I like to do with this, especially with metal, is you can add some like an amp, some sort of amp, or something that has distortion, just to kind of give it some more distortion. Sounds good. It helps it blend in with the guitars better. What I should have put before that, high and low pass filter. So I'm going to leave the high pass on the bass high at about 500 hertz, and this one's going to be around 5K. Cool, sounds good. I'm gonna throw a compressor on here. I'm gonna compress pretty hard. I'm gonna have a 10-to-1 ratio this time. Don't want to limit it, just compress really hard. Cool, and that sounds good. Alright, that's really how you get a good bass tone. You can always group these, or you can send them to a bass aux, and you can do some EQ or whatever, but this is how I'll mix bass, and like I said, I'll definitely make changes to the low end when I bring in guitars. Definitely, definitely is a task blending in kick and bass, and then bass and guitars, so I'll get more into that when I add the guitars in the next video.